Oh, okay, last one. Okay, you'll bait me into one more thing. This is the last stunlock, chat. This is literally the last stunlock, okay? It's inexcusable that the TCG doesn't have a full rulebook. If my opponent chains Satellar Knight Skybridge to creature swap and take the thing I summon, who gets the effect? It shouldn't be met with, if you look at the rulings for Chang Ying, all right, everyone. Correct! There is no reason we should be playing drag and drop with rulings. Magic the Gathering has a comprehensive rulebook. It can be done. It'd be easy to do because there already exists an OCG database that contains a significant amount of the rulings. All that would be required is to write those down into comprehensible sentences and then put them in a big-ass book that judges can reference. So instead of judges being like, if you go to the OCG page for Chungus, then you can see a similar one, even though many of the words used in both cards are completely different. Or in America, judges don't have to go, if you watched the most recent Distant Coder stream, you can see that when he goes on Facebook and talks in the judges lounge, like, that sucks. Just needs a rulebook. Everyone in the comments is out of their fucking mind. I can't believe how stupid they are. So first off, I say, you all know Magic the Gathering has this, right? It's very doable. And Daddy Shrek. Realistically, there's also a ton of old cards they don't have to worry about that are like normal monsters and basic spell traps that don't matter. The line from the judges program is, we have no plans of doing this. But it's not even that, because in 2011, the judges program said they were going to do this, and they released an update demystifying how Rivalry of Warlords and Gozen match work. They said most of the issues we have with rulings come from the same 30 or 40 cards, so we're going to compile a database you can reference of rulings regarding those cards. And they did it for 2 cards, and then they stopped. I don't know why. You want a book of rulings for every single possible interaction in a game with well over 10,000 cards? Anon, come on. Yes, I do! I want to know how to play your game! What do you mean? Of course I do! And, you know, you don't have to be like, here's how this works with this. Here's how this works with this. You just have to write a series of rules that can be applied to any given circumstance. Then you can reference that for the dozens of times they come up. Is that too much to ask for? No, because it exists in Magic. Oh, but no, keep going. That'd be like multiple constitutions long. Alice PBG. If you are in chat right now, come collect your VIP. That's every book. Unreal. The most American comment I've ever seen. That would be longer than the Constitution. Well, I should hope so. What the fuck do you mean? Oh my god, that would be multiple constitutions long. Yeah. It's not that long. I understand being frustrated, but unless Konami wants to pay an entire extra department to playtest for literally every interaction between every card and every circumstances, which they don't, it's going to be up to players to discover these things on their own. I want them to do that. And also, they don't have to discover every interaction. Thank you to the 3 additional people who joined the raid. That's crazy. I care about, you know, the interactions that will actually happen. This one's good. Yu-Gi-Oh! Players are so fucking stupid. People in the comments going, do you want Konami how to explain how to play this game in a coherent way? Get real, Anon. Yeah, game make me think. Game doesn't tell me what to do in specific interaction. Correct response. Okay, asshole. Who gets the monster? In the one above, who gets the monster? Silence. Game make me think. There is no thought involved in these interactions. It's just a guess. I kind of thought Yu-Gi-Oh! Did have a Magic the Gathering styled in-depth rulebook. Yeah, me too. It does have a generic rulebook. Have you ever looked at the Yu-Gi-Oh rulebook? The Yu-Gi-Oh rulebook is like, this is a trap card. It's not helpful. It's called Precedent, and it is actually easier than writing an entire handbook of every possible situation. No, it's not. Actually, doing archaeology to figure out how a card resolved is much harder than just referencing a rule. It's actually way harder. I think Precedent is less hard? Practice law! Man, Yu-Gi-Oh is not governed by rules. Yu-Gi-Oh is governed by rulings, and design is exception-based. What the fuck are you talking about? What does that mean? Yu-Gi-Oh isn't governed by rules. It's governed by rulings. What? Even in a world where I give this the most credit I possibly can, they're describing a scenario that sucks and should be changed. Oh, Jesus. I think a rulebook would be out of the question with how complex Yu-Gi-Oh is, but a TCG rulings database similar to the OCG one would be great. While the back half of that is true, it's not out of the question. Magic has one. Magic's a much more complex game than Yu-Gi-Oh. I'll say it. The floor on Magic is pretty low. A lot of the time you're attacking with 3/3 vanillas in draft, but the ceiling is unbelievable. The amount of stuff you can do with Magic cards far eclipses what's possible in an individual game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And somehow they have come up with a rulings document that mostly deals with all of these corner cases. I don't know why. An individual game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Will have more complex interactions than an individual game of Magic, but the craziest stuff you can do in Magic far outweighs the craziest stuff you can do in Yu-Gi-Oh! And they wrote the rulebook with that in mind. Oh my goodness. Yeah, they've also got twice as many cards. Everyone always says that Magic the Gathering is more complicated, but can you give me some examples? Because I don't know anything about the game. I'll give you the most, the classic example. Okay, so 2 cards for you. This is an enchantment, 4-mana enchantment called Opalescence. It says each other global enchantment. Global enchantment is a keyword that doesn't exist anymore. Each other non-aura enchantment is a creature in addition to its other types. Has a power and base toughness equal to its mana value. So if you have a 4-mana enchantment, it's a 4/4. Becomes a creature, it's a 4/4, right? Humility is another 4-mana enchantment that says each creature loses all abilities and becomes a 1/1 creature. I have Opalescence and Humility out. What happens? Well, in which order? One person knows it. So, in order to resolve this question, you have to delve into a part of Magic the Gathering called layers. Like how Skill Drain and Jinzo interact, layers govern what happens when 2 global effects are kind of happening at the same time, right? The difference is that Magic the Gathering has a shitload more types of effects that cause this type of interaction to happen. So there are multiple different layers. Let me actually see if I can just pull up the wiki for layers. So the layer system handles the interaction of continuous effects. Here's how it works. The value of an object's characteristics are determined by starting with the actual object. For a card, that means the value of the characteristics printed on the card. For a token or a copy of a card, that's the value of the characteristics defined by the effect that created it. So then you go all applicable continuous effects applied in a series of layers in the following order. Layer 1, rules and effects that modify copyable values are applied. 2, control changing effects are applied. 3, text changing effects are applied. 4, type changing effects are applied. These include effects that change an object's card type, subtype, or supertype. 5, color changing effects are applied. 6, ability changing effects, keyword counters, ability removing effects, and effects that say an object can't have an ability are applied. That's humility. And 7, power and toughness changing effects are applied. Okay, so that's actually not all of it. Within layer 1, there are 2 sub-layers. You might be noticing that magic has multiple iterations of what we have in the damage step, which is layered things like this. The only difference is there's like a quadrillion different ones. So in layer 1A, the copyable effects are applied. Layer 1B, face down spells and permanents have their characteristics modified as defined. Okay, so some cards in Magic allow you to turn cards face down when you manifest or morph a creature. And then all rules and effects in layer 1 have been applied. The object's characteristics or its copyable values. Then there's a guidance on layers 2 and 6. And then in layer 7, there are 4 sub-steps again. 7A, effects from characteristic defining abilities that define power or toughness. 7B, things that set power or toughness to a specific value. 7C, effects that modify power or toughness. And 7D, effects that switch power and toughness. Okay? Applied in that order. So back to the original question, how do these 2 cards interact? Well, the type changing effect applies at layer 4, but the rest happens in applicable layers. That means it happens even if the permanent loses its ability before it's finished applying. So if Opalescence, Humility, and Worship are on the battlefield, and Opalescence entered the battlefield before Humility, layer 4 is Humility and Worship. They become creatures that are still enchantments. And then in layer 6, Humility and Worship lose their abilities. Then in layer 7B, Humility becomes a 4/4, Worship becomes a 4/4, Humility becomes a 1/1, Worship becomes a 1/1. And because Humility entered the battlefield before Opalescence, in layer 4, Humility and Worship each become creatures that are still enchantments, and in 6 they each lose their abilities. Then in 7B, Humility becomes a 1/1, Worship becomes a 1/1, Humility becomes a 4/4, and Worship becomes a 4/4. That's 2 cards. That's 2 cards. Do you know how many cards in Magic change other cards, remove or add abilities? And that's one series of interactions. But thankfully, all of this is in the fucking rulebook. So if I'm a judge and someone asks me this question, I can give them that answer and cite them a line in the rulebook that governs it. Do not show me this pic, you fucking piece of shit. No. I'm not sure if I appreciate this level of complexity. Well, it still exists!